Is Putin furious after the US hijacks an Iranian civilian ship, positioning Russia to dramatically break the Hormuz blockade? Putin's top aide urgently calls Mojtaba's foreign minister, issuing a bold declaration directly challenging America's illegal chokehold. Will Russia make a dramatic entry into the Iran war right as the fragile ceasefire hurtles toward its expiration deadline? Has Putin deliberately elevated the stakes, warning the US risks triggering catastrophic wider confrontation across multiple fronts? As Putin emerges as the dominant power broker, will the Hormuz Strait transform into America's ultimate US-Russia flashpoint? Russia has stepped in to object to the widening US naval blockade of Iran, particularly after Washington seized an Iranian cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman, calling the move counterproductive and escalatory. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov described both the blockade and the seizure of the Iranian cargo vessel as unlawful, framing them as violations of international maritime law and the current ceasefire framework. Lavrov made those remarks during a telephone call with Iran's Foreign Minister, Said Abbas Araghchi, on April 20th, as reported by Moscow's foreign ministry and relayed by Iranian state media. In the call, the two sides reportedly assessed the rapidly evolving situation, including the seizure of the Iranian ship and the tightening of US controls on maritime traffic around Hormuz. Lavrov also warned that any renewed confrontation could destabilize not only Iran but also the wider Gulf region, where multiple countries are already on heightened alert. Russian Foreign Ministry said, and I quote, "The importance was noted of continuing diplomatic efforts aimed at preventing the situation from spinning out of control and averting a relapse into armed confrontation." Unquote. During the high-stakes conversation, Araghchi accused the United States of repeated ceasefire violations, including the blockade and the detention of Iranian commercial vessels, which Tehran has denounced as acts of maritime coercion. Iran has labeled these actions as illegal and provocative, arguing that they undermine ongoing diplomatic efforts and threaten to derail the fragile truce. Russia has consistently backed a Pakistan-mediated truce and has urged all parties to avoid a return to open conflict, positioning itself as a key advocate for continued dialogue. The call follows earlier failed direct and indirect talks between the US and Iran held in Islamabad from April 11 to 12, which did not yield a breakthrough agreement. Washington is now pushing for a second round of negotiations on April 22, but Tehran has signaled hesitation, indicating that it views the blockade and recent seizures as obstacles to meaningful talks. Iran has accused the United States of violating the ceasefire after attacking its cargo vessel in the Gulf of Oman. On April 19, US forces reportedly fired on the ship, disabling its engine before boarding and seizing it. President Donald Trump later confirmed the seizure, saying the vessel was under US sanctions. In response, Iranian media said drone attacks were launched targeting US warships operating nearby. Iranian officials described the strikes as direct retaliation for what they called a US act of aggression. Iran strongly condemned the incident and warned that further retaliation against the US would follow. Ibrahim Zolfagari said, and I quote, "The aggressor United States violated the ceasefire and committed maritime piracy by firing at an Iranian merchant ship in the waters of the Sea of Oman and landing a number of its terrorist marines on the deck of the vessel, disabling its navigation system. We warn that the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will soon respond to this armed piracy and retaliation by the US Army." Unquote. The operation comes at a time of fragile ceasefire and growing uncertainty over ongoing diplomatic efforts. The US action also came just 2 days before the 2-week ceasefire with Iran was due to end. Meanwhile, Iran says it has no plans yet to attend the next round of talks in Pakistan. Iran released a video on April 19 showing underground missile and drone launchers, signaling that its strategic weapons infrastructure remains active despite weeks of war. The IRGC-linked video portrayed ongoing overhaul and reconstruction work on Iran's missile and drone stockpiles, suggesting Tehran is trying to showcase recovery and resilience during the ceasefire. IRGC Aerospace Force Commander Saeed Majid Mousavi said the replenishment of arms had been accelerated, according to reporting cited by Iranian outlets. Mousavi said the pace of replenishing weapons increased during the ceasefire period, indicating that Iran used the pause to restore parts of its arsenal. His remarks were reported by WANA and Press TV just ahead of the expected expiry of the ceasefire window. Saeed Majid Mousavi said, and I quote, "Iran's speed in updating and reloading missile and drone launchers have surpassed even its pre-war pace. We are aware that the enemy is incapable of creating such conditions for themselves during the ceasefire. Since the ceasefire began on April 11th, the United States has had to bring in ammunition from the other side of the world in a trickle. They have lost this phase of the war as well. They have lost the Strait, they have lost Lebanon, and they have lost the entire region." Unquote. Mousavi's claims came after US media reports argued that Iran still retained the ability to sustain its missile capability despite the conflict. The Wall Street Journal, citing US intelligence assessments, reported that Iran still has thousands of ballistic missiles in reserve. Those missiles could reportedly be pulled out of hiding or retrieved from underground sites, reinforcing concerns that Iran's strike capacity was not eliminated. Despite weeks of US-Israeli strikes, Iran has retained around 70% of its pre-war missile inventory, according to the New York Times. It has also maintained roughly 60% of its missile launchers, preserving credible strike options against maritime and regional targets. When the two-week ceasefire began, US assessments indicated Iran still had access to around half of its ballistic missile launchers. Since then, Iranian forces have reportedly recovered around 100 buried systems, pushing the number of operational launchers back up towards 60% of pre-war levels. Attack drones, although reduced to around 40% of their pre-war strength, continue to threaten commercial shipping in contested waters. Intelligence reports say Iran is also digging out additional missiles from damaged bunkers, which, once recovered, could bring its usable stockpile back up to roughly 70% of pre-war levels.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.